Hello and welcome to JJM Leadership Conversation. My name is Joseph Mudau, your host for today. At JJM Leadership Conversation, we aim at empowering you with a message of hope and also changing the leadership narrative. We believe that everyone around us, we are all leaders. You don't have to occupy a particular position for you to be a leader. All that you have to do is to solve those legal problems in your area. Today, I'm going to be welcoming two of my guests on what I call the church debate. Yes, it is important. You heard me very, very well. We're talking about it's a church debate. It is important for us to also reflect on where we are as a church, and in particular, coming from COVID-19 lockdown, and previously we were able to handle or deal with the topic, can the church survive COVID-19? But today, we'll continue our conversation in the area of succession planning. Underline that or just type it on the bottom there, succession planning. Is this the topic relevant for the church? Is this topic important for the church? Or it is something that is not necessary for the church of today? I've invited two of my guests that are going to help me to unpack this topic, because it's going to be a very interesting topic, dynamic in nature, and also robust in debate. Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to help me in your home to welcome my guests that are with me. The first guest that I have, he's a pastor leading a church in Midrand in the city of Johannesburg, and I want him to introduce himself to the viewers at home. So I want you to welcome my first guest. Then from there, we're going to move into my second guest, who is going to help us from the management point of view as a management consultant. He will introduce himself as well. And let me start by welcoming my first guest, Pastor Thivha. Please just introduce yourself to our viewers at home.
Hi, my name is Pastor Thivha Lidzhade. I am a senior pastor of Bethesda Bible Church. I also chair an organization called Church Leaders Empowerment Foundation Africa, which is abbreviated CLEFA. That is an organization which is represented by leaders and pastors from different ministries across South Africa and Africa in general. So in short, that's what I do. I'm also in my other life a financial planner, and so I do have some inputs that I also give from the financial management side.
Of course. And I think, welcome, Pastor Thivha, much appreciated. And I want to move to Charlie Masala, who is coming into this debate as a management consultant. He will help us to unpack this debate.
Hi, my name is Charlie Masala. I am the CEO of Myers Monroe International. And of course, I'm a board member at CLEFA, as it was, Pastor Thivha, which is he chairs. And I'm also a management consultant in the area of human resources development. And I am, a brand new author too. So I'm glad to be here.
Thank you very much for making time to join with us in this robust debate, as we are going to open the topic about succession planning. What is that animal? What is that thing called succession planning? Is it relevant for the church? And I just want to start maybe with Charlie, from your perspective as a management consultant. What is succession planning from management consulting point of view?
Well, succession planning, it has to do with the transfer of vision, influence, even character, and skills from you as a senior leader to those who are coming behind you. So it has to do with ensuring that when you are not here, your organization doesn't die with you. Because if the organization that you're leading dies with you, then you've been a failure, because even God is a generational God. So it must be from generation to generation. So it can't start and end with you. So that is what succession planning is. So succession planning has to do with you planning what life look like beyond you. How is your organization gonna survive when your influence, your personal influence, your personality and your way of doing things is no more on earth? How is that going to continue? That is the concern of succession planning. Because if you don't plan for your succession, and then of course there won't be an organization. But the most important thing about succession is not just about the buildings. That's why even the ultimate leader, Jesus Christ, never built buildings, but he built people. So succession has to do with a leader, planning what the organization is going to look like when they are not here. 50 years down the line, 100 years down the line, when they are not here, will this organization that they started still continue? That is what succession is about. So it's a transference of those items that I just mentioned.
Pastor Thivha, is this debate relevant for the church? And what is your take on the topic of succession planning?
Yeah, thanks, Joe, and thanks, Charlie. I think you put it very well. It's very relevant, and most relevant for that matter. Can you imagine if from Jesus there was no succession plan, then we wouldn't be called Christians today. Because it would have died in the second generation, as most ministries, especially this small ministry that a founder founds a ministry, and when he dies with the ministry. Something very interesting is that when you talk about succession plan, if you break down the words, there is the word success.
Okay.
And my interpretation is there is no success without a successor.
Okay.
Once there is no successor, there is no success. A legacy of a person must live beyond them. That is when we say you are a true leader. So there is the word success, there's also planning. So it also tells you that you cannot just leave it to chance. There must be some planning of some sort. And if you look in the Bible, good leaders always produce good leaders.
Okay.
The way God created us is that as a living species, you must produce after your own kind. If we see you, we kind of know who was your mentor, or who is your mentor if you're still being mentored. So succession plan involves success. For success to be there must be a plan in place. Unfortunately, the mentee cannot have the plan. The plan must be with the mentor.
Okay.
And in most cases, where we get it wrong, it's when the so-called mentor is intimidated by his own students, especially in the church.
Very, very, very interesting. What I like it, and you're just reminding me of the times, our school days, where you will find young people that will come through the school system, and sooner or later you will find them thriving, after they've gone to universities and all that, and the teacher remains a teacher and continue to teach in those schools systems. So for me, I think it's an interesting one. One thing that I want to just talk about before we move into the next break, I want to look at the topic of succession based on the historical aspect. And I'm sitting here, Pastor Thivha, you are a senior, and you were mentioning that the first time you were on television, it was 1986. Some of us were still very young at that time. So, but since some of us opened our eyes, we have found pastors who still remain in their positions because they are still alive in those positions. And so, do you think that this topic of succession planning has been debated enough, or there's enough education that assists independent churches in particular for them to be ready to continue beyond the life of an old pastor, or the founding pastor, who remains a pastor even today? Because most of them, if I can just indicate, Pastor Thivha, is that some of the churches that we have known, without mentioning names, we are hearing that after the founder has passed on, people are killing each other. I mean, we're reading these things in newspapers. People are taking each other to courts. Are we ready for this topic?
Yeah, Joe, what I can say is, like I said, the responsibility, as far as I'm concerned, rests with the mentor, because the mentor is supposed to be a teacher.
Okay.
And any teacher that is intimidated by their own students, they are not fit to be in the profession. And I've seen a lot of pastors, once you start rising up, they will support you. Once you start intimidating them in that you're becoming knowledgeable, instead of them celebrating that, oh, I've done a great work, they get intimidated and they start oppressing you until, that's why you see a lot of good leaders break away from other churches. What does it tell you? It means it tells you that the mentor or the founder did not have the wisdom to accommodate people who are even more wiser than he is. Let me put it this way. I've got two sons and a smaller nyana one. My firstborn son, if he comes here, you will think he's my uncle. He's big. My secondborn is much taller. What I'm proud of? I always say to people, do you see what I can produce? I must be proud of my product, regardless of whether it's taller than me. And most pastors are intimidated by their sons that are taller.
Wow. Most of the pastors are intimidated by their sons, which are taller than them. We're going to come back after the break and continue with the conversation.
Christ Media TV app is now available at Google Play Store. Download it today and get the latest updates and live broadcasts on your phone. The app's features also enable you to connect with our Facebook page, access frequently asked questions, and read the Bible online. Christ Media TV app, now available for free at Google Play Store. Download it now and stay connected.
Welcome back to JJM Leadership Conversation. We continue with the church debate with my guests that are in here. Before the break, we were talking about historically, you finding that in our churches, we don't have in particular enough data for us to look at this topic of succession planning, because most of the pastors that personally I have known, Pastor Thivha, they are still alive, and we don't know what is their plans beyond their lives. Charlie, do you want to come through into this topic? What is your view on that?
I think when we talk about succession, we need to think of the three levels of succession. The first one is all of us start at stage one, which is called a dependent stage. This is where you come in as a young man and you're dependent, or young woman, and you're dependent to the older woman or to the older man who is your mentor. First of all, succession is impossible without a mentor.
Okay.
So let's start there. So the first level, it's as I said, is dependency. So I won't take pride of my 40-year-old son coming to me with the nappies on and with a bottle of milk.
Okay.
That situation, it will be very abnormal situation, because from dependency you got to move to being independent.
Okay.
That is the stage where you say you are now a man, you can take care of yourself, you can pay your own bills, you can have your own home and own everything. So stage 3, it's called interdependence.
Okay.
State of interdependence. That is where you now have grown up from dependent stage, from independent stage. Now you are not just independent yourself, but you are also interdependent to other people. So at this stage is a stage where a leader who is wise or operating in wisdom will not treat a upcoming leader who is at a dependent stage and at independent stage the same, because at this time you are supposed to be allowed to think for yourself and do things for yourself at independent stage. and at interdependent stage. But interdependent stage is where now the people who I used to feed now feed me, and I feed them. Okay. The defect with the system that we have, especially in churches, is that there seems to be an understanding that once I am a leader, or if I have founded something, I must stick on it. You know, we've got to remember that the purpose of leadership is not the maintenance of followers, but it's the releasing of the leaders. So when you become interdependent, that's the stage where I must know and treat you as a leader yourself. Even if you are in my church, you know, people who sit in your church, Pastor, those people, some of them are CEOs, some of them are engineers, some of them have 600 people reporting to them, some have the whole organization reporting to them as CEOs. So obviously, they're not in your church sitting there because their heads are heavy and they can't think. No, these are leaders. So each time you find yourself in a position of leadership, as a pastor or as a senior pastor or whatever state you are in, you should realize that you are a leader, not just of followers, but you are a leader of leaders. And with you, it should even be easy because you understand the scripture, Genesis 1:26, where God is creating this species called man, which is going to have dominion. Of course. And that relates to everybody. Everybody who's in your church is a leader themselves. So you should remember that. But of course, there seems to be an understanding that once I am called by God, I'm a prophet, or I'm a pastor, or I'm this and that, that my job is to just say, go there, move that, come here, stand up, run there. That's the purpose of that leadership should be to nature, and that is why I believe that a person called the pastor has a serious role, because you are not just teaching people who understand just one thing. Yes, you are teaching people who have come there. Some of them are already learned better than you. Let's just face it, pastor. The guy who is drawing up, stadium plans of stadiums and so forth, and you did your theology degree. It's not the same thing. So as a pastor, you got to be, you got to learn other things and not just ministry, but understand that those people who are there. The point I'm making is the people who are there are not just dummy people. These are people who can think, these are people who can see through things. And that is why maybe you haven't kept most of them.
I want to come in there. Pastor Thivha, do you want to come in with a different view before I do my follow-up question, or are you okay with that? Because one thing that I needed to look at, Pastor Thivha, is that I think there's a bigger struggle, I think, from founding pastors, because I want to be a devil's advocate here, where they invest their resources at the inception of these ministries. They sacrifice their families, they sacrifice whatever they have. So when you bring the topic of succession planning, you sort of like taking away the pension of someone else, the inheritance of someone else, because at some point this thing, we invest into it hoping that one day it's going to yield results, and these results are going to be harvested by my family and everyone around me. How do we balance that, Pastor, where we're discussing the succession, but also the efforts and the investment which was done in the course of ministry?
Yeah, that's interesting, and that's where I think where the problem is, when a person look at the ministry as a family business. The trend in South Africa and all over the world is that when I'm called by God, it's my responsibility to call my son. So God calls me. Do you want to repeat that, Pastor Thivha? What did you say? When I'm called by God, I call my son or I call my wife. So what do I mean by that? I mean that I need to make sure that it stays in the house. Yes. Then already the foundation is wrong, because the church does not belong to me. The church belongs to the owner, according to Matthew 16. He says, I will build my church. Upon this rock I'll build my... Now, the moment there is that, when I start mixing my career and the church, proper planning, remember we're talking about success planning.
Yes.
Proper planning was supposed to be like, I'll be turning, I don't want to give out my age, I look up.
But at least I'm happy that I know. Okay?
I'm approaching 60.
Okay.
Now, because there was no proper planning, I must preach until I die.
Okay.
But if there's proper planning, the church should have been paying for my retirement plan.
Yes.
Just like any other employer, my group life, then that means when I reach age 65, I retire because I want to spend my money while I travel all over the world. But because I don't have money, I will stick to the pulpit and I will forget some of the verses.
Yeah.
And I said, can I get a chorus? And any young man who start to rise up, it's a threat to my career. Then what do? Son, you need to start preaching.
Yeah.
So I must call my son, because at least my son will take care of me.
You want to keep it in the family.
Yeah.
Charlie, what's your take, especially when you look at people who are saying, we have invested so much, in our families, we struggled, in the initial days of our ministries. And how do we balance that with the topic of succession?
Jesus said,
I like that laugh.
okay.
Yeah.
When you are called by God,
Yes.
you are called by who?
God.
By God, okay?
You are not called by Charlie Masala or the church members. God called you, and because God called you, He will always, it's almost like we forget that what we teach every Sunday, that He supplies our needs.
Oh, okay.
Our needs are never supposed to be supplied for by any scheme that we put together called church.
Okay.
Our needs are supposed to be met by God. It is true that when I look back in many situations that I have been in my life, and I know that most of the people who are called founders,
Yes.
they are not called founders by mistake.
Yes.
They are called founders for a reason.
Okay.
Because they
I'm also a founder, by the way.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
Because,
Okay.
Yeah, because they have invested.
Okay.
There's a lot of investment which
That goes in there.
in ministry, and
Okay.
it's true. And I appreciate the fact that you raise it up. That investment is an investment of time, is an investment of resources. I know people who have started ministries really from their pocket. So there is financial investment, which is accompanied by emotional investment.
Attachment.
And attachment. That the temptation is there all the time. Now for some it's not a temptation anymore, it's practice. But I think what one should do, I'm a kingdom activist myself. I don't fight the church, I love the church. And I love the founder of the church. And I love pastors to be very, very successful.
Okay.
But pastors shouldn't make themselves successful. God is responsible for making them successful.
Wow.
And the people who God brings, I know people who left churches because they are known to be in tendering systems, or they are business people. They are always looked at that you must bring such and such. We don't have to make people even to drive them away from church because we want something out of them. We need to believe that the same God who have called us and we have walked with Him, He is going to provide. That way we won't have any need, a need to manipulate, a need to hoard things for ourselves, and so on. I mean, some churches, you go to some churches, you find that even the church itself, it's a PTY, or it's a whatever it is.
Or maybe point of correction, the majority of churches aren't registered. Before you talk about, and most pastors, the church's account is their personal account. It's like another.
Interlinked. It's just a portfolio.
So when you do stuff like that, you might spoil a name which has been a very good name for a long time, and this is because you emotionally invested and financially invested personally. These things sometimes intertwines without you realizing.
Okay.
And when you realize it, you have already eaten a lot of church's money. You see, but you didn't realize.
Of course.
So that talks about how we should structure ourselves for succession.
Yeah.
Yeah. Again,
Okay.
Joe, following on what Charlie is saying, there is a temptation.
Okay.
I'm a pastor, I'm pastoring a church. There's a temptation. When you start a ministry, you start with that passion, I want to serve God.
Yes, yes.
And as the ministry or the church starts to grow, you get to a point, the church must serve me. That's why, if you have seen a lot of founders, they change titles like it's out of fashion because they feel they are no longer there in the serving level. Now they need to be served. Some pastors can't even pour a glass of water for themselves.
Yeah.
So
They've forgotten.
they've forgotten.
They've forgotten how to.
I mean, if
No,
you go
so
to conferences,
you wanna tell me that COVID has reminded them that they can still pour a glass of water for themselves.
I think COVID brought a lot of
Sanity in that space.
in that space.
Yeah.
And realize this that the moment you're having people around you, bodyguards or whatever, people running around you. Each time I go to a place and I look at that, then I know that I'm in a place where I'm dealing with a lot of low self-esteem.
yeah, it's low self-esteem.
Yeah, why? Because it make you you are like a parasite. You eat from the fear of the people because you like your own confidence. But when you have your own confidence, you will be like Jesus.
When I'm a guest speaker in some ministry, because I don't have protocol in our church.
Okay.
I don't think Jesus didn't have protocol. If he had protocol, the lady with the issue of blood wouldn't have touched him.
She will not have arrived.
And Judas will not have survived.
Judas wouldn't have
He
survived.
will not have succeeded.
And for you to go to the bathroom
Yes,
as a
yes.
guest speaker,
Yeah.
it's so difficult. You need 5 guys to accompany. I don't need it.
And they wait for you outside.
And they wait for you. And how do I?
So you can't stay
relieve
longer there.
myself when there are guys listening to me. It's like
Yeah.
I'm some form of president of no country, and this thing is low self-esteem. And when you get to that level, you have moved out from the serving to be served. Jesus Christ would wash his disciples' feet. How many pastors will do it today? We want the church members to wash our feet and to treat us like we're not one of them.
Wow. We're going to continue with this topic after the break. Stay tuned and don't go anywhere. And don't forget to write on the comment box your takeaways, and also share this video with other people that you believe can also learn something from this conversation.
COVID-19 is a new illness that can affect your lungs and airways. It's caused by coronavirus. This is a global pandemic which requires everyone to take responsibility in order to minimize the spread of coronavirus. It is now compulsory for all South Africans to wear a face mask in public even after the lockdown eases. If you cannot afford disposable face masks, you may have to make use of the cloth face mask. But what if you cannot sew one for yourself? Well, that's where Miss Price Fashion comes in. We can assist you with cheap and affordable reusable quality face masks. We produce 3 types of face masks: the pleated face mask, the nose curved shape face mask, and the lace face mask. All these masks have 3 layers of fabric as proposed by the government. We have all sizes, including children's face masks. Our face masks start from as little as 25 Rand per mask. We also have special prices for bulk orders. To order your mask, please call the number on the screen. You can also place your order through our website, which is www.misspricefashion.co.za. You can also follow us on our social media pages. Thank you for your support and stay safe. God bless South Africa. Miss Price Fashion, your dress code, your signature.
Welcome back to JJM Leadership Conversation. We are continuing with our debate, or the church debate, around succession planning. I've got my guests here who are helping us to discuss, unpack this topic, a very interesting topic indeed. And I'm hoping that wherever you are also learning or picking up some of your takeaways. I want us to look at this part as we are wrapping up our conversation. I want us to look at the aspect of who succeeds the founding pastor, who qualifies to succeed the founding pastor. And I will tell you, my guest Charlie, and also Pastor Thivha, that my observation is that some of these successions that happens, they were not pre-planned. Is that, the founding pastor, he dies, and then from there we have to wonder who is going to succeed him. And when he's still alive, how is this thing supposed to be managed? What are the best practices that we can look at? Because we are seeing a lot of people that are called sons, if we should call it that way. They are called sons. But along the way, these sons are shifted. It's either others, they will be given another church to go in, or they will just go and open one of their churches on the other side. But how do we make sure that we look at the best practice which are important for the church?
Yeah, thanks, Joe. You touched on the father-son relationship. That's the most abused system that I've seen in the churches.
Okay.
And people announcing themselves fathers.
Okay.
I'm your father, you're my son. You're my spiritual son, I'm your spiritual father. Ironically, when I die, I don't appoint you as my spiritual son to take over the church.
Okay.
It's my own physical son who must take over the church. It's an abuse that happens in the church. One of the other abuse that is mostly used in the church is, as the senior pastor and as the founder, I hear from God. So when I come to the board meeting, to avoid any disturbance or any challenges in terms of argument,
yes,
I just said, God said. So when I say God said, God said this man will be my successor. There's no debate about it. I believe proper planning is that the leader must run what you call relay race, must run with the successor. Just like Moses, Joshua didn't just wake up and tomorrow Joshua was a leader.
Okay.
And Joshua was not Moses' son, physical son. But they ran together.
Okay.
He would send him as a spy with Caleb. He was running with him. When he was tired, Joshua will hold his hands. So Joshua was not strange to the running of the church of Israel.
So he was not strange to that system.
He knew how to lead. And it was Moses' intention to train him, which most leaders today don't do. We retire by dying.
Charlie, what's your take on the topic?
I wouldn't like to sort of impose to any man of God who is the right one in terms of whether son or spiritual son or whoever you pick on the street,
or wife
or whatever. I would like to go back to Jesus, the ultimate leader. When Jesus chose his successor, who was going to be the founder of the church, his name was called Peter. The qualification, it's clearly put on who it's best to lead, succeed. In the interview that Jesus had with Peter, it was a very interesting interview. There was only one question which was asked, and the question was, Peter, do you love me? That question was asked 3 times until Peter said, you know
I love you. Was Peter intimidated of the question?
And when he finished there, then Jesus said, you have the job. You are the successor. So when you choose a successor, it is important that you don't choose a stranger.
Yes.
It is important that you don't just choose the one who love your vision or who love your power, because if they want it, they're going to take it. Who love your influence. But the qualification that we saw there from Jesus was love.
Charlie, coming to the interview.
So the question in that interview was one question.
Do you love me?
And then he said, when he was tired after the third question, he said, you know that I love you. And what did he say? He said, then feed
my sheep.
And I'm not opening anything for abuse. I'm just saying that is what we saw working. When I look at example that we have of Dr. Miles Monroe in the Bahamas, that church was well led and still well led. Why? Because when Dr. Monroe knew that his son was not the successor of the church.
Okay.
It was very clear, and it was never run as a family affair. It was never run as a family business or anything. If he was called, obviously there was nothing wrong in him becoming there, because he's already there. You're not going to choose strangers to become part of the vision and the successes, but you're going to go with the people that you have, that people that you're mentoring. But of course, there is a lot of abuse in that system.
Yeah.
First of all, don't die without appointing your successor and let your successor known to the church, to avoid problems where people fight for leadership. So today we have got Bahamas Faith Ministries, which is continuing because the issues of succession planning were clear and clarified. So whether it's a son or it's not a son or whatever, Peter and Jesus were not even cousins. His cousin was John. John was his family. So, but he gave the church to Peter.
Yeah.
So there shouldn't be confusion.
Yeah.
When
Thank you very much, Charlie. As we wrap up here, and I just want to give you a minute each as we are going to wrap up. We've got a lot of young pastors that are watching our videos, that are watching this, this broadcast. What is the last message that we can give to them as they start? How can they build up this foundation? What will be your last message to these young people, young pastors that are also leading their churches today? I'm going to start with Pastor Thivha as we wrap up our conversation.
Yeah, following up on what Charlie said, a typical example of Jesus interviewing Peter. What I've seen today, which some years back, people will go to the ministry for the love of the Lord.
Yes.
Yes.
Can you repeat that? Can you just repeat? Talk to our viewers in that
People will
camera.
go to the ministry for the love of the Lord.
Okay.
Now we go to the ministry for the love of the glamour, the position, the money that followed, the status, and all those things, which explains why the fighting. Nobody can fight to serve.
Yes.
Nobody can fight to suffer for the kingdom. We are no longer servants. We are no longer serving the Lord. We are being served. So we are fighting for position to be just like in the political scenario. When you say a minister, you are actually talking about a servant.
Yeah.
But are our ministers, political ministers, are they servant or they are served? So the church ministers are also not servant; they are being served. So we're fighting to be served.
1 minute, Charlie.
The issue of succession is a very important one. Actually, the question was, as a young minister, what would you do as you get started? Then the greatest, act of leadership is mentoring. So you got to find people that you can mentor.
Yes.
And then from that, plan very early who is your successor in your ministry and introduce your successor. If anything changes, for whatever reason, be clear about it also so that there's no confusion.
Yes.
I think, as we get in as young people, we're excited, we have the zeal, but we don't realize that, by the way, there is a future. And the future, by the way, the future we're talking about is not even the future about you dying. I mean, about you getting old and so forth.
Yes,
you
yes.
could die anytime.
Yeah, of course.
And when you are not there, or you could be incapacitated anytime. Because imagine if your voice gets stuck and you can't speak anymore. You can't teach. If you're paralyzed, you can't teach.
Wow.
So if you hit by the car and you're sleeping in the hospital for whatever months and so, you can't continue with your work. From a deathbed, even though you are alive. But the important thing is that identify your successors. They may not just be one person.
Yes.
Maybe there may be two. Identify them, but rank them.
Yes. Thank you very much, Charlie. Much appreciated. What a topic indeed, succession planning. We hope that there is something that you've learned for yourself during this broadcast. And if there is something that you've learned, write on the comment box there and continue to share this message of hope. And thank you for watching. God bless you and meet you at the top. Bye-bye.
See you.